Welcome back to There She Goes. Today, we're going to talk all about PCOS. And I'm really excited for this episode because PCOS is a big topic these days. More and more women are getting diagnosed with PCOS. So we need to start understanding what is going on in the body, what is causing it, and how we can reverse it. And to do that, I'm going to explain what PCOS is from a Chinese medicine perspective, what I see in my practice, and really steps we can start to take to start reverse PCOS. And I'm also going to go over some questions I got from some of you on social media about PCOS. So I'm really excited to be able to answer these questions for you in a longer format as well. So first, let's talk about what PCOS is from a Western medicine standpoint. PCOS is understood as a hormonal and metabolic disorder that affects the ovaries and other parts of the body, other symptoms of the body. That's the way Western medicine defines PCOS. Western medicine is really good at diagnosing, and the best way to really understand PCOS is the way that we diagnose PCOS in Western medicine. And to diagnose PCOS in Western medicine, you usually need to have 2 out of the 3 present. So the 3 things are irregular or absent ovulation, meaning you're not ovulating, 2 high androgens, which you would know from a blood test or physical signs like excessive hair growth, or 3 actually have polycystic ovaries, which you would see on an ultrasound. So in order to be diagnosed from a Western medicine standpoint, you have to have 2 of the 3, which means you could have irregular or absent ovulation, and you could have high androgens and not have polycystic ovaries, which is really kind of like the namesake of PCOS, but still be diagnosed with PCOS. Now let's talk about what PCOS is from a Chinese medicine perspective. From a Chinese medicine perspective, we see PCOS as an imbalance of the systems of your body. Typically, that will include an imbalance of the energy of the spleen, the energy of the kidneys, and or the energy of the liver. But the highlight, the hallmark that we see in PCOS from a Chinese medicine perspective is dampness. Now, dampness is what we consider mucus in the body. It's like thick substance, thick fluid that's like really sticky. The mucus that comes out of your nose or your throat when you're a little sick or have a cough or a cold, that's mucus in your body, and that mucus can be in other areas of your body as well. I like to think of it almost like swimming down a muddy river, right? Like if you think about the channels and the energy in our body of all of our systems, we want it to be a free-flowing, clear river. And you can think of mucus as almost a really muddy, sticky river where it's really hard for energy to flow properly. It's really hard for blood to flow properly. And combined with this dampness, sometimes there's an aspect of heat and sometimes there's an aspect of cold, which I will get into what all of these mean in this episode. First, let's talk about dampness, because almost every woman who has PCOS, or at least every woman that I've worked with, which is a lot, has some form of dampness in their body. Now, symptoms of dampness might show up as polycystic ovaries, right? The actual cystic ovaries is a form of dampness. It's fluid-filled sacs. That is dampness in the body. It can also show up as cystic acne, having trouble losing weight or excessive weight gain. It can also show up as feeling tired, and it can show up as not ovulating, right? When you're not ovulating, it's because there's a depletion or a stagnation in your body or a mixture of both. And if there's a lot of stagnation in the body from that dampness, it makes it hard for your ovary to drop an egg. The stagnation or accumulation of blockages blocks the natural release of an egg. Now let's talk about reasons why dampness would form in the body. The main one is there's a weakness in the energy of our spleen. Now, the energy of our spleen is responsible for digesting and absorbing the nutrients from the food that we eat. It's also responsible for digesting and absorbing feedback from the outside world, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But when it comes to our digestive system, it's responsible for digesting our food and turning that food into nutrients. When there is a weakness in the spleen, your body is not able to properly digest that food to turn it into nutrients, and it ends up as this stagnant mucus waste in our body that creates dampness. Now, from a dietary perspective, things that will create dampness in the body are anything that's hard for our body to digest. So cold, raw foods are really hard for our body to digest. Our body needs to heat them up in order to break them down. Our body needs digestive fluids to break them down. And cold, raw foods, it's going to need more of this. It's going to need more of that fire and more of that heat. So over time, eating a lot of cold, raw foods will weaken the energy of your spleen and end up as dampness, as mucus in your body. Other foods that are going to create dampness, again, anything that's hard for your body to digest. So foods like excess sugar, fried foods is a big one. Any packaged goods, honestly, anything that comes from a package is pretty much foreign to our body. It's overprocessed or it has ingredients that our body doesn't know, right? And because of that, it's hard for your body to digest. Alcohol is going to create dampness. Coffee over time will create dampness. I'll get into that a little bit later when we talk about heat. Excess dairy, especially processed dairy, excess wheat, especially processed wheat. All these things are hard for your body to break down and digest and will create dampness in the body. And while food is a main culprit in weakening the energy of our spleen and creating dampness, most of the time it is not the only one, and most of the time it is not the biggest one. The biggest culprit in creating and weakening the energy of our spleen is stress, anxiety, and worry. Stress, anxiety, worry, fear, excess emotions weaken the energy of our spleen. So if you have chronic stress or anxiety or, stored trauma in your body, that's going to weaken the energy of your spleen from a really deep constitutional level. And it's going to make it hard for your body, for your digestive system to get the energy it needs to break down the food. And again, it ends up in dampness and mucus. And this is what I see most in my practice is a constitutional weakness, meaning there's something that's been going on in your body and mind for a long time. Something that usually happened early in childhood, whether it be a traumatic birth or traumatic upbringing. And when I say traumatic, it doesn't need to be a big trauma. It can be a small trauma. It could be, something that just felt impactful for you. And trauma is not what happens to you, it's how you react to it. And if you think about yourself as a child, we have strong emotions and we don't always understand what's going on in the world from a logical perspective. So as a child, a lot of things can be traumatic, right? Parents that argue all the time, a divorce, changing houses, locations, or schools. There's a lot of little things that can add up that feel traumatic in our body. Growing up with a parent or caregiver that's constantly worried or stressed is going to allow you to learn to be worried or stressed, and that's going to be your go-to. So then you have chronic worry or stress, and that weakens the energy of your spleen. Now, a couple of other things that will create dampness in the body. A big one is depletion, and this is also what I see a lot in my practice, is just severe depletion of the body. When our body doesn't have enough yin energy, it stagnates resources in order to conserve energy. Yin is thick fluids in our body. Yin is sex hormones such as estrogen and progesterone. So yin is thick fluids. And when that thick fluid stagnates, that creates dampness, right? Again, it creates this fluid-filled blockage in our body. Things that deplete yin and will cause yin to stagnate in your body are things like overexercising. Again, anxiety, worry, and fear are really depleting on our body, and that will create yin to deplete and create a stagnation. Not going to bed earlier enough, not getting enough sleep. Yin is really about rest and restoration and nourishment, right? So whenever we're doing yang activities, which is energy, it's daytime, it's fire, it's everything else, we're really depleting that yang energy. Ideally, our bodies and our mind should always be a balance of yin and yang energy. So when you're doing too many yang activities, there's no room for that yin energy. So at the end of the day, overworking, overstressing, overexercising, all of those is going to deplete our yin energy and create a stagnation and dampness in the body. A lot of the times women with PCOS will also present with heat in the body. There will be dampness, but there will also be heat. So let me talk about what heat is and how that develops in the body and some signs and symptoms of what heat is. So heat really is what it is. It's heat, and that ends up as inflammation in the body. Some symptoms can be excessive hair growth as heat rises to the skin and stimulates that hair growth. It can be acne, especially red acne as a sign of heat in the body. It can be that feeling of anxiety, again, as that heat rises to our heart. It will give us anxiety, that jittery feeling. Feeling hot all the time can be a sign of heat in the body. And chronic pain or pain at all can be a sign of heat and inflammation in the body because, again, heat is inflammation, and also skin issues that are red or itchy, things like eczema and psoriasis can sometimes be a form of heat. Now, heat appears as our body's response to dampness. Dampness, again, it's these thick fluids in the body, and dampness has a cooling aspect to it also. I forgot to mention that, but it creates stagnation. And whenever there's stagnation, our body wants to break up that stagnation. So it releases heat, which is a yang energy, to help break up that stagnation. But what happens is because it's trying to break up the stagnation and it's trapped, that heat gets trapped in the body too. Heat can also arise from that imbalance of yin and yang energy and that depletion of yin energy. So again, yin is that cooling aspect of our body and yang is that heating aspect of our body. So if we do not have enough yin, that yang energy will rise to create heat in the body. We will not have enough yin, enough cooling aspect to put out that heat. You can almost think of it as like fire rising and we don't have enough water from our hose to put it down. That's going to create heat and inflammation in the body. Foods that are also going to create heat in the body or exacerbate heat in the body are things like coffee, onion, garlic, and spicy foods. All of those are hot in nature. In Chinese medicine, when we talk about dietary theory, there's an energy to all of our food. There's energy to the food, and then there's energy to the way we cook it. And the energy of coffee, onion, and garlic are very hot, and spicy foods are very hot. So if you have these symptoms of heat in the body along with PCOS, you are going to want to avoid these hot foods. But most of the time, it's not eating these hot foods that create the symptoms. It's an underlying factor, again, such as stress, anxiety, overwork, and stored trauma in the body. Stress is also another thing that creates heat in the body. So women who have PCOS will almost all the time present with some form of dampness. Sometimes there'll be heat, and sometimes women will also have cold in the body. Usually it's one or the other. Heat or cold is more predominant, but typically you will have both, because when there's hot, there's cold, and when there's cold, there's hot. I will explain that in a minute. So symptoms of having the cold in the body could be feeling cold all the time, having cold hands and feet. Low basal body temperature, especially in that luteal phase, is a sign of cold in the body. Painful periods, bloating, constipation, or diarrhea, all of these can be signs of cold in the body. Having trouble losing weight, again, that can be dampness. It can be cold in the body as well. Pain in the body can be cold. And typically people will have cold in the body because there's a lack of yin and there's a lack of blood. Blood is the warming, moving aspect of our body. When we do not have enough blood to warm our body, that's when we start to feel cold. And also when we have too much dampness, that can suppress that yang energy. And the yang energy is also that heating and warming aspect of our body. So when we have too much dampness, that suppresses our yang energy and suppresses our heat, which will end up in cold symptoms. But really, to summarize, in Chinese medicine, PCOS is a sign of dampness in the body and sometimes combined with heat or cold. And that dampness is generally created from a weakness of the energy of the spleen. Things that weaken the energy of the spleen is stored trauma, emotion, stress, anxiety, and the foods that I mentioned that weaken the energy of the spleen. So if you want to reverse PCOS, you first need to address the underlying stress and trauma and worry and suppressed emotions in your body, and then focus on diet and nourishment and how you can really nourish and support your body. And a big question I get is PCOS reversible? And yes, it is absolutely reversible. And it's reversible naturally when you focus on these three things. When you focus on aligning your lifestyle in a way that has that yin-yang balance that your body needs, when you're eating the right nourishing foods and not eating the foods that are depleting your body. And 3, when you're working on addressing stored trauma and emotions and stress and really working through them. You know, a lot of times women will come to me and they'll say, you know, I really want to manage my stress because I know it's affecting my fertility, or I know it's affecting my hormones, whatever it might be. And you know what? If you say that, you're already 50% of the way there because you understand that your stress is affecting your body. But here's the thing. I'm not in the business of managing stress because that's not supporting you. Managing stress would be like you're a firefighter who is constantly putting out fires. And I don't want you to have to work that hard. Instead, what I do is help you get to the root cause of what is triggering that stress in the first place. Stress comes from our perception, our thoughts, and our beliefs of a situation. So why are we thinking that? Where is that thought coming from? Where did that first start in our body and our mind and our spirit? And then how can we reverse that? I love working with women to manage stress because it's amazing to see how someone can go from like level 1 to level 10, how like stress can completely lighten and change their life. And it is doable. A lot of us that with chronic stress, and I was one of those people who had like this underlying low chronic stress. I seemed very put together and calm to other people, but on the inside, like I always felt the need to control situations. You know, if I was going out to dinner, I would have to know what was on the menu. If I was going on a trip, it had to be planned ahead of time, right? That need to control is coming from a place of stress, anxiety, and worry. I was that person. So I can tell you it is completely possible to reverse your chronic stress. And in doing so, you will help reverse your PCOS. Another question I got is it possible to get rid of symptoms like facial hair and fatigue? Again, it is absolutely possible to get rid of these symptoms once we get to the root cause and then work backwards, right? How was this created in the body? And how can we now make the body feel safe to let this go, to reverse things? You know, a question I get a lot is like, what is the root cause of PCOS? And I basically described that in this video, but the thing is there's no one root cause. I have had a patient with PCOS who She had PCOS because her body didn't feel safe because of early childhood experiences. I've had patients with PCOS that have PCOS because they overexercise and undereat, and there's this underlying feeling of not feeling good enough, right? Like there's multiple reasons that can get you to the state of depletion that then causes your body to create dampness and stagnation, and that ends up as PCOS. But there's no one core reason, or quite honestly, even one core belief that ends up in PCOS. Another question I got is, how can I tell for sure if I have an ovulatory cycle, meaning if I'm not ovulating that cycle? The best way to tell that is to get a smart fertility tracker such as Anido. Test your hormone levels at home. So you pee in a cup, you dip in the stick, it connects to an app on your phone, and it can tell you your hormone levels, which can help you verify that you ovulated. You can also test your basal body temperature. That's a really another proven way to work. So if you take your basal body temperature, your temperature first thing in the morning before you eat, drink, or talk, that's kind of like your baseline temperature. Your temperature should rise 1 degree after ovulation. So if your temperature is not rising, that's probably a good sign you did not ovulate. Another question I got is, how do I need to prep if I'm trying to conceive? And the answer is getting to the root cause of your PCOS. What is making your body not safe to ovulate? What is causing the polycystic ovaries? What is causing irregular periods? We really need to get to the root cause of that. That's why I have my membership. That's why I have my group programs, to really help women to get to the root cause of what's going on in their body, to get to the root cause of their symptoms, to help them really listen to what their body is telling them, and then learn to really support their body so that they can reverse these symptoms. Another question I got is, how do you get ovulation to return normally? And again, this goes back to really getting to the root cause, which comes down to reducing anything that's depleting your body, and then doing those things that really nourish your body. And again, all of this information is in my monthly membership, and I go through all of this with women in an individualized manner in my group programs. But a lot of it comes down to really strengthening the energy of our spleen, getting rid of stress, anxiety, and worry in the body, and then eating those nourishing foods. Another question, can acupuncture cure PCOS? So this is a hard question for me to answer because acupuncture is kind of a blanket statement. So there's different forms and types of acupuncture, which most people aren't aware of, which is okay because you're not supposed to be. But in the United States, most acupuncturists practice TCM. TCM is what is taught in the schools, and TCM is what our board exams are based on. TCM cannot heal PCOS. It can help mitigate your symptoms. It cannot heal PCOS. I practice classical acupuncture and classical energy transmission, and classical acupuncture absolutely can help you heal PCOS, and I'll explain why in a minute. That being said, you still need to be an active participant. You need to do the work. You need to eat the right foods. You need to start balancing your life. The acupuncturists can't do everything for you. They can help to support your body and mind, but you still need to do the work. Now, the reason I say classical acupuncture can support and heal PCOS and TCM can't is because TCM was created in the 1950s. In the 1950s, Mao came into power in the communist era of China, and he decided he really wanted to westernize China. So he banned acupuncture. Acupuncture was actually banned in China and then for a lot of the 1950s. Then a few years later, they decided, wow, our hospitals are run. We have too many people sick. We need to bring Chinese medicine and acupuncture back. But in doing so, they didn't bring the complete set of acupuncture back. They took away a lot of the channels that are used to treat constitutional long-term chronic illnesses. So if you go to a TCM practitioner, they're mainly working with channels that primary channels. So the channel of the liver, spleen, kidney, lungs, that's all they're working with, right? And those are really helpful to help treat acute conditions, but they're not helpful to help treat chronic conditions. Treat chronic conditions, we need what we call the complement channels, which treat that constitutional layer of energy, that energy that has been created over a lifetime or through deep traumatic experiences. It also is what helps to treat storing emotions in our blood and like a lot of other beautiful things. That's a long way to say that some acupuncture can treat PCOS and some can't. Not all acupuncture is created equal. Not all acupuncturists are created equal, just like every other profession in this world. I love this question. So if PCOS develops into fibroids, is it the same underlying imbalance responsible for both? And the answer to that is yes and no. It could be. I don't know your history. The person who asked this, I don't know the history. Anecdotally, what I do see in my practice with fibroids is they come after an extremely traumatic period of their life, a really stressful period of life. And PCOS can also develop after a stressful period of life. They do have the same underlying etiology that fibroids is a stagnation of blood, and PCOS, part of it it can be a stagnation of blood too. Again, a stagnation of any resource in the body. So sometimes they have the same underlying imbalance and sometimes they're different, but they're both connected and related, especially if they're developing in the same body. And lastly, someone asked, what are the foods to reduce and eliminate with PCOS and supplements? You want to eliminate and reduce any food that is hard for your body to digest and that's creating heat, dampness, or cold in your body. So those are cold raw foods. It is excess sugar, excess wheat, and excess processed dairy. It is coffee, onion, garlic, and spicy foods, processed foods, fried foods. Again, anything that's not grown in the ground or eats off the ground is hard for your body to digest, and you're going to want to avoid or completely eliminate it altogether. In terms of supplements, I am not a huge supplement person. I think supplements are what they're called, a supplement, right? When I'm more of a treating the root cause, and in doing so, some supplements can sometimes be supportive for that, but they're never going to be the end all be all. And a lot of times taking excess supplements can actually have a reverse effect on your body. Because if you think about it, if you're taking 10, 15 supplements a day, that's a lot of nutrients that you're putting in your body at once. And that's a lot of processed nutrients that you're putting in your body at once. And that is hard for your body to digest. And the issue with PCOS in the first place comes down to your body not being able to digest and absorb the food for the most part, or that's a big part of it for a lot of women. You know, a supplement that's really popular these days for PCOS is inositol, myo-inositol. The research behind it is good. That's all I can say. I've had women who have taken it and it supported them. I've had women who've taken it and it has done absolutely nothing for them. What it does is help to balance your blood sugar. A side effect of PCOS is your blood sugar being out of balance. Again, that goes back to the energy of your spleen being weak, your spleen pancreas not having the energy it needs to support your body and your digestive system. And so myo-inositol can support that, but it can't support the rest of your body. It can't support the fact that your body is depleted and it needs more energy. It needs more resources. So I hope this was helpful for you if you're struggling with PCOS or know someone struggling with PCOS. And if you take away nothing else from this podcast today, I want you to take away that PCOS is absolutely reversible. PCOS, like everything else, is not created in a vacuum. And the same way PCOS is created, we can reverse that and help you heal from PCOS naturally. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in to Their Chicos. I hope today's episode helped you see the connection between your emotions and physical health a little more clearly. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with anyone who could benefit from this conversation. And remember, true healing starts from within. Let's keep exploring that journey together. See you next time.